I'd like to call the December 11th, 2012 meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. Open with the Pledge of Allegiance again. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Ferrer.
Mr. Chairman, David Bergstrass.
Here.
Michael Esselstyn.
Here.
Albert Hayes.
Here.
Thomas Stover.
Excused.
Mark Finkel.
Here.
Michael Clark.
Here.
Robert Lester.
Here.
Robert Fulton.
Here.
John Hudson. Here. Carol Wright.
Here.
Richard Ferraro. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I need a motion to, are there any revisions to the meeting agenda? Just one, right?
There is. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chief Engineer, that B under contracts recommendation to the board will be
Postponed until next
postponed
month,
to
please.
Okay.
the next meeting.
Correct.
All right, so I need a motion to
I'll make that motion.
revise the meeting agenda.
Second the motion.
All right.
Mr. Esselstyn.
All right, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right. Guests?
Nope.
None whatsoever. Public comment, any? All right. Right now, approval of the board minutes from the November 7th meeting. Any questions, revisions, changes? Need a motion to approve the minutes?
I make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Right now, look for a motion to go into executive session before we get into the portion to discuss litigation.
Yeah, it's to consider the terms of settlement with regard to the threat from litigation
Right. Okay.
regarding the apportionment.
All right. So I need a motion to.
I'll move the motion.
Okay. I have a motion.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd also like to include.
Could
General-
you do those, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Motions were,
Ask 10 Hayes.
Mr. Aston and Mr. Hayes. All right, let's include the financial officer, chief counsel, and the executive officer. Also,
1018.
yes, and we'll go upstairs. We'll retire upstairs. Do you want to leave? I mean, we can go upstairs.
We can go upstairs.
If you'd like.
You can stay right there.
That's fine. Why don't we do that then? If you guys don't mind leaving. We could. Back from executive session. All right, next on the agenda, we're all here. Discuss the apportionment modification. Is there anything to discuss? We're going to table it for now.
I want to do it in part of your report.
Well, yeah,
Okay. Why don't we hold
Chairman, I
it?
think I can handle that in my report if you'd like.
All right. Why don't we do that?
Members of the board, the staff, myself and two board members did meet with representatives of the 5 counties. At this point, I recommend that the board does not proceed with, at this meeting today, addressing the modification of the current apportionment. Holds off. At this point, we appear to have a tentative settlement of the Hudson River area apportionment. It's tentative, but I'm confident that we will ultimately resolve this apportionment very shortly. It's mine and staff's hope that we can accomplish this in January of this coming January, essentially the next board meeting. The terms, at this point, I'm not going to disclose it because it's still tentative. Each of the individual counties still need their own approvals for this settlement, but it is fair and accurate and safe to say that such a settlement will allow the regulating district to pay its tax obligations, and both past due and going forward, as well as begin repayment of the monies borrowed from the Black River area reserves in August of 2011. That we would recommend to the board when we get to that point that take place over time. Nevertheless, it's a very positive thing. And with respect to actually meeting in January, that leads me right into my last item, and that is on page 14 on the board. I think it's page 14. Tentative dates for the 2013 meetings. And if everybody take a look at that, I do right now have one proposed change to those dates, and that's the January meeting. You'll note that on here, it's the typical date we would have is the 8th. I'm recommending now that the board push that to later in January. I think right now, conceptually, January 23rd, it's a Wednesday. It follows, I believe it's Martin Luther King Day that Monday, so that's why it's a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. I would suggest that the board
schedule it.
Reschedule it to later in January.
That's fine. Still be held in Mayfield?
It doesn't, you know what, it doesn't have to be. Again, at this point, and this is something we do this time of year, and the board finally adopts in January. We're flexible on that. If there's been kind of a shift in how things are done with respect to the regulating districts meetings, board meetings, and that we try to use municipal buildings, whether they be county, town, or state office buildings, whenever possible. Keep the, it keeps meeting costs down. You're not paying for a room when you do that. And we still try to make every effort to get meetings in both watersheds. I think that's important, and I believe the board does also. By the same token, now there's a new wrinkle within getting meetings within each watershed. There's also some competing interests and will be in the future in the Hudson River area, where you've got Great Sacandaga Lake and the permit holders that are keenly interested in what goes on at the board meetings and decisions made by the board. Mm-hmm. And now there will certainly be a new group of folks, I expect, being the 5 counties, the paying beneficiaries within the Hudson River area. So I think that we should continue the practice. I recommend that the board continue the practice to at least have a couple of meetings a year within one of those 5 counties.
Oh, I agree. We're going to have enough room in Mayfield. That's what
Yeah, we got that there. And so before you, right now we do not have a meeting scheduled for February. I think it's, at this point, we normally have 2 months off intermittently. March, we've got March 12th, Utica. April meeting, the 9th, Warren County Municipal Center. We've done that in the past few years. May, right now we're proposing or recommending and putting it out there for discussion. Johnstown Town Hall. June, Inlet. July, Mayfield. I would, with respect to July, I would suggest that whether it's Mayfield or another place around the Great Sacandaga, I think it's a good idea to have a meeting there so that you permit holders, in particular the permit holders that don't live there year-round, have the option, or have the availability of the board being, you know, the many
Yeah.
people that are only there
Makes it convenient.
3 months a year, what have you. That's kind of been a practice many years in the past. So the July meeting, Mayfield, August right now, tentatively is an off month. September, Lowville. And if you'll notice, now October, this past October, the board met at Stillwater Reservoir. It's an out-of-the-way place. We have a significant facility there, and it's really the center of the Black River area operations. I think it's important for board members to see. We may also have, there's a potential that there may be new board members at that point next October. But by the same token, I would offer to the board, if not Stillwater Reservoir, also we have the option of Indian Lake. Indian Lake is one of those meetings where I don't believe anyone has ever stayed because I don't know where you would.
Tents.
We could do that. And it's also, it's more or less in the geographic center, or close enough so that you can drive from either direction. It's about the same time. The only other one that we really have that same luxury with is Utica.
Yeah.
Just Indian Lake's more scenic. And yet, we also have a facility there that board members are not likely to see at any other time. Unless, even when you travel through Indian Lake to see. So there's certainly justification, strong justification for having a meeting in Indian Lake.
All right.
November, Ballston Spa again, and the Saratoga County Municipal offices, or county offices, sorry. And December has historically been, again, Watertown.
All right. I'm just wondering with Mayfield if there's enough room. I'm anticipating there may be a crowd there that shows up.
We could look at it. We could certainly look at another location.
It's just a thought. That's a small room.
It's not that big. You're right.
Okay.
Johnstown Town Hall.
That's a little bigger. You could flip-flop those if you wanted. You could
Just a thought.
You could do the January meeting at the Johnstown Town Hall and May in Mayfield.
Okay.
And then May's kind of the start when people start,
May and July. Yeah.
many of the out-of-towners start heading back to their summer homes, and at least some of them.
I mean, we may not get a crowd. It's just
And yet, I would expect more than,
at Mayfield. I don't see where we could even spill it over. You know, make them stand outside and look through the windows.
it's not a good time of year to stand outside normally.
No. Think about it. No, we're going to think about it now because it's.
Right, we're going to end the meeting with a resolution to
Yeah.
resolve where you guys are going to meet in January, so.
I'm open to anything, so whatever you guys want to do.
I think Johnstown makes a lot of sense,
Yeah, it's just a little more room.
pending availability. It is next month, so.
We'll work something out.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and it gives us 6 weeks at least to pin that down, so.
Okay. All right. So, any other questions?
No. At this point, Mr. Chairman, that's what I have for the board. Unless you have-
That was plenty. Good. Okay. Thanks. All right, under contracts, we have the solicitation of bids for the repair of concrete surfaces at Stillwater. Soltan?
Yes. Staff proposes some repair of concrete surfaces at Stillwater Dam, the gate outlet passageway. They serve the 5 gates, and as a result of time and deterioration of those surfaces that occurred as a result of wear from water and then sediment and silt, opposed to patch and repair that concrete surface. And there was a budget established in the 2012 three-year budget. And so staff is prepared to solicit bids from contractors through an invitation for bid procurement process to complete those repairs. And we expect sometime this summer to issue a notice of proceed, assuming that everything goes smoothly with the procurement. And so engineering staff and our Black River staff seek board authorization to issue an invitation for bid.
You don't need a motion on that, do we? Oh, we do? All right, need a motion to authorize solicitation of bids for the Stillwater.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Espen.
A second?
Second.
Mr. Finkel?
Mr. Finkel, sir.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Do your solicitor.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to general counsel. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. My report is on page 15. Much of my report would be a recitation of what we discussed in executive session with regard to litigation. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
I don't have any right now. We pretty much beat it to death.
Okay.
But I appreciate it.
One update is we got one FOIL request between the date I did the report and
Really?
today. So.
Somebody out there's awake. Okay. All right, any other questions for general counsel?
No.
Thanks, Rob. Mr. Farrar.
Mr. Chairman, my report begins on page 16, ends on 53. Just highlight, as we close fiscal November, the current general fund balances for Hudson River area and Black River area were approximately $445,000 and $741,000 respectively. On page 17 is the summary financial for the month ending on November 30th, and after that is the detailed breakdown by cost center. On page 40 is the current cash flow fund balance forecast, which goes through June 30, 2013. Which I have to review. And that report does reflect the receipt of the 0910 Georgia Pacific assessment that I
That we approved.
discussed back last meeting, and that was a little over $70,000. That is a one-time assessment, which we did miss. That was an undeveloped parcel. And on the permit renewal fee front, we have, as of, I believe, last week, received fees in the amount of $125,000, which is actually 50% of the total due. Well, it's
Not quite.
over 50% of the total due that we received this time last year. In fact, I
Oh, really?
looked at what we received through December last year, and I don't believe we were even at 100,000.
Started early.
So the early mailing actually did net us significant.
Gave us some cash flow. Nice.
So it's surprising. And on the contract side, quickly, we have 4 contracts out for approval. There's an update here, the actual status of the first contract, the Old Forge 6 Lake Engineering is actually back and approved from the Attorney General's office, and there's several miscellaneous contracts as listed that are currently being reviewed by the Attorney General. That's my report. If there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Did you want to just clarify the one point about the undeveloped head, Georgia Pacific, or just?
Well, I mean, we had discussed it.
Yeah, we discussed it.
Fairly great length at the last meeting.
It's
but-
undeveloped, and because it's undeveloped, meaning there's no
There's no
power there.
Right.
and not subject to the Federal Power Act, which is what destroyed the rest of the former
Yeah.
historic Hudson River apportionment.
So we can collect them now. Good. Don't have any more questions. Any questions for Mr. Burr?
No.
Deep in thought. Mr. Fulton?
Yes, thank you. My report begins on page 54. It was exceptionally dry again in November, particularly in the Hudson River area. We had between 13 and 19% of historic average precip for the month through the 26th of November. I think we did get a little bit more at the end, but it was still, even adding that in, I believe it was still fairly low. As a result, we had about 50% of the historic inflow to Great Sacandaga Lake and Indian Lake, and we made releases that were about 138% and 138% and 94% at Great Sacandaga and Indian Lake, respectively, of percentage of average. Black River area, fairly similar. We had a range of 30 to 48% through the 25th of November of historic precipitation, and inflow to Stillwater Reservoir was 42% of historic average, and we released about 74% of historic average, trying to conserve as much water as possible at Stillwater, which we used quite a bit to maintain the Black River throughout the summer and fall. Along that topic, just a couple interesting facts to pass along regarding both Sacandaga and Stillwater with regard to elevation and the kind of an indication of how dry it's actually been. Great Sacandaga Lake on December 1st was at an elevation of 755.2. It was actually the lowest it's been on that date in the last 10 years, the 10 years of the offer of settlement.
And how close is that to target, Rob?
And actually, December 1st is the target historic average, and this year's elevation, we're all within a tenth of a foot of each other. So on that date, the historic average is about 755.2. So it's been the first time since the offer of settlement that we actually hit on December 1st the actual target elevation. When you consider that the inflow was only 78% of historic average inflow, it gives you a quick idea of what the offer of settlement really does in terms of
water storage.
pushing water, storing water, keeping that reservoir high. And I think it reinforces what we've expressed before about the offer of settlement truly driving the elevation of that reservoir higher all the time. We're able to achieve the target by virtue of the fact that we had only 3/4 of the historic inflow for the year. So thus the reason we sometimes struggle when we have just average precipitation throughout the year. And in a similar fashion, but just certainly not related to any operating scheme, Stillwater Reservoir, January through November 2012, received about 8.6 billion cubic feet of water as inflow. Historically, through that period, we get about 12.7 billion cubic feet, so we're around 67, 68%. And through that point, we're on track of having seen the lowest inflow to the reservoir since at least back as far as 1986. So all of those figures and numbers can point to actually how dry it truly is and has been throughout the summer. So just thought I'd pass those fun facts on to you today.
a good thing we stored the water.
Yeah, it is, but, and it's actually a good thing we're getting, the rain we've been getting the last couple of days is helping us recover some of the lower elevations that we've had in the other reservoirs. Sacandaga is sitting pretty nicely, but we're still low in Stillwater and in Indian Lake. So, if there are any questions, I'll take those. Otherwise, that concludes my report.
I don't have any.
I do have, actually, outside of my report, I do have one other item for board consideration. There is a memo concerning outstanding emergency action plan items.
Yes.
I'll just briefly go through that. You'll recall that in September 2009, the board, in an attempt to reserve as much of the reserve funds as possible, suspended operation or suspended the completion of maintenance projects. And two of the projects that were postponed included the Conklinville Dam breach analysis and inundation mapping, and the installation of warning sirens downstream of Conklinville Dam. Both of those projects came from, originated with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission request to complete those projects as a licensee. In a letter dated October 23rd of this year, FERC requested the submission of a plan and schedule for completion of part of the breach analysis and the installation of the warning sirens. The reason they only asked for part of the breach analysis is that they recognize our financial limitations and know that, you know, the partial analysis will satisfy some of their concerns in the interim. So senior staff participated in a conference call with FERC. We expressed, the difficulty we had in completing the projects because of the limited funds and resources, and we concluded the call with FERC indicating that we would pass along to the board their FERC's letter as well as a draft response to their letter requesting plan and schedule. We do have an estimate for the completion of these two projects. The partial breach analysis and inundation mapping would cost approximately $21,000 out of the remaining $141,000 budget for that project. And the warning siren project, based on the 2008 bid that we received from the low bid that we received from our bidders, was $365,000. We've drafted a letter outlining a plan and schedule, and that's included with the memo that I gave you. And staff recommends the restart and rescheduling of the Conklinville breach analysis as well as the warning siren project. And I've included the letter from FERC as well as the draft letter to FERC, which outlines the breach analysis beginning sometime in this month and concluding with the partial inundation mapping hopefully by April of next year. And the warning siren project would need resolicitation of the bids, the procurement process, and we would expect to evaluate proposals sometime late April or mid-April with a notice to proceed occurring in May, and hopefully, if keeping the schedule based on the previous bids, keeping the schedule for installation and testing, we would be complete with the warning sirens by sometime in October of 2013. That plan, particularly the warning siren plan, is what has been given to FERC, what we've to this point discussed. There may be cost-saving alternatives
Right.
to notifying folks downstream of Conklinville Dam, which FERC may entertain. Included in the process is the district's discussing the notification of downstream residents with the emergency management officials from the Washington, Warren, Saratoga County. And you know, it's possible that we might be able to come to an agreement with those folks as well as FERC, some other method that would satisfy the notification process. But right now, the warning sirens is what FERC has asked for, what they expect, and until we have a better solution or something that satisfies them,
That's our option.
we'll have to stick with that option. So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
The reason I asked the chief engineer to actually present this to the board today with the memo and the draft letter, even though we discussed it last month, I believe, at least briefly, but a couple weeks past when FERC expected to see it, but I wanted the board to see that prior to it actually being finalized and mailed, because it's a change in schedule again. I mean, it was originally scheduled and the projects were deferred, and now we're recommitting to a schedule.
Right.
So that's the reason that that Rob has, brought that before everybody today, to let you know that the FERC is leaning on us, and that we have to recommit to a schedule for certainly these two outstanding items, to avoid any further action on their part. I mean, they need to be done. We had committed to them a long time ago.
Right. So have we sent it?
We're trying to get back in the groove again.
So we sent them the schedule yet, or?
That's the letter that's attached to that.
The draft?
memo, the draft, that will go, I assume, tomorrow or the next day.
It could go tomorrow if the board agrees with this schedule and commits to the expense associated with both of those, restarting both of those projects, the $21,000 plus upwards of probably at least $365,000 over the next year for warning sirens. That would be, of course, we have to get the bid on it, and I would.
How committed are we to the warning siren if we send this? Or this is just a schedule to?
I think it's
Still open to
just a
negotiating.
schedule.
Okay.
Again, I think
Why don't we send it just
FERC
to-
would seriously consider if the emergency management agencies of the counties felt that an alternate notification process satisfied,
They would defer their judgment on that.
that they would defer to the local agency
All right.
on it. So we'll certainly try to steer that way if we can to minimize the
Yeah,
cost.
because what's
So you're
available
looking
today?
for an authorization to proceed with a notice to proceed to a consultant on the
Inundation mapping?
inundation breach analysis project?
Right, well, to restart the project.
And then so that you can solicit
So
bids on
restarting the
that
project
warning
includes
process.
asking the contractor, Gomez and Sullivan, to restart their job.
Okay.
It was postponed. It would include the, after our discussion with the emergency management folks and FERC, if we could not come to an alternative method of satisfying FERC's desire, then we would go forward with the warning siren, solicitation of a contractor to complete the warning sirens. And certainly if it included, or if we had an alternative, I think we'd be bringing that back to the board too, just to, ask for authorization or whatever procurement or other alternative method might be proposed. But right now, because that is what was scheduled and had been postponed and what FERC is looking for, we're asking the board just to authorize us to move forward,
Yeah,
at least with
send them the schedule right now and start to
the
negotiate.
schedule that satisfies.
Attempt to
FERC's
negotiate
desire.
something.
Rob, I'm quite certain you've had discussions with Rick as far as paralleling the financials with that.
The financial side of the potential 365 and 21,000.
Which we performed the preliminary cash flow based on what the cash flow might look like post-settlement,
Okay.
and that would certainly be there.
Possible.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay.
And we didn't use 365, we in fact used a larger number.
Right.
I believe the number we used was 500,000.
Yeah.
Any consideration discussed if, for whatsoever reason, which we hope doesn't happen, that the settlement doesn't wash out the way we would hope?
We would, again.
Well, I think
Just readdress FERC with a letter?
I think we would have to let FERC know that,
All right, okay.
the very promising position we find ourselves in today has
Right.
changed, and the 500,000 for the warning sirens. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but I think you said if that were the case, that the 21,000 costs for the
Is okay.
the inundation mapping could be completed under our current financing,
Correct.
but we clearly would have to, again, postpone moving
Okay.
forward with the warning sirens if we did not have
All
that
right. Then I'll
negotiated
I'll
settlement.
move that as a motion.
Okay. All right. So I have a motion to approve the scheduling and the inundation mapping.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, go ahead. Move on with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anything else, Rob?
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
that's everything.
Mr. Hudson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 89. A couple highlights that access permit renewals, staff is busy taking care of that process. And we are continuing to do riprap using existing rock along the shoreline and armoring up the shoreline along the lake, and as long as weather permits, we'll keep doing it. That's all I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody might have.
No, I don't have any. Thanks. Ms. Wright?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 95. And weather obviously has been cooperating with our field staff. We've been able to continue doing some outside work and appreciate that we've been having such good weather. The field staff and the office, administrative assistants, and I have been working together for the last couple of months in fine-tuning what we have for visual field inspection reports. And I think that we're pretty much done our tweaking and hope that we've come up with some kind of a report of documentation of different things throughout the Black River area that we try to keep our eyes on. And by having some more documentation, we can look back and say, well, where were we a few months ago, and how is this moving? And so I think we're giving a little bit more of an accurate report, hopefully, to our engineers, and et cetera. We've continued. We had an incident over in North Forge. Fortunately, with the weather, that we've been able to repair the tie downs, which are part of our gate operators and gates. We have 2 double tie downs, 1 on each gate. One broke a few months ago, and as the weather continued to stay low and the water has kind of gone down in the reservoir, we've been able to do some work on. And kudos to our field staff and every one of the guys that are out there, because they not only they designed a new system and put it in place, but they actually fabricated steel for brackets and done a great job of replacing the equipment that needed to be done. So I really want to reach out and make sure that some recognition went out to where it really should. Other than that, I think we've done the last of our removal of invasive species. It was in the spillway area at Stillwater. It was identified during the summer by inspectors. So we think that we pretty much removed what we can for this year, but we probably expect that there's a lot of system that grows underneath the ground, and we'll watch for that in the spring and try to nip it before it takes off again. So, having said that, if you have any questions,
No, not at the moment. Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the board? Questions, comments?
I have none.
No.
All right. So I'll entertain a resolution for the next board meeting. Oh,
I'm going to modify the resolution. that
thank you.
we'll offer to the board to reflect Wednesday,
Wednesday, January
January
23rd.
23rd, as the initial location of Johnstown Town Hall
At 10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. Johnstown.
I think that's the 25th. Did you say the 23rd?
23rd, I thought.
23rd? Oh, okay. You are right, sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody Google it.
With all these devices, we ought to be able to get it right.
23rd, Wednesday the 23rd.
Yes.
Tentatively at Johnstown Town Hall, pending availability. How's that?
And it is.
So I need a motion for that.
I make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Mr. Estes, second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion for adjournment?
Move that.
Mr. Estes,
Second.
Okay. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to wish everybody a safe and happy holiday.